Welcome to another episode of Real Talk Mormonism. This is number 19. I am your humble host, Steve A's. That is talent on loan from Golob. So glad you decided to drop by. I host the Mormon News Roundup, which goes live every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to cover the latest and greatest in LDS news. And this show, though, is Real Talk Mormonism, where you can interact with me and discuss all things Mormonism. Whether you're interested in church history, theology, or current events, this show is your platform. I welcome both critics and defenders of the faith. This is your time to shine on screen. Whether you don't know the first thing about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or you're a member of the Strengthening Church Members Committee at church headquarters in Salt Lake City, there are no dumb questions, and I am ready for the controversy. Nothing is off limits. Ask me anything. Stump the Chump. No holds bar. Of course. We have to abide by YouTube's terms of service, but this is your time to outsmart the know-it-all. No scripts, no rules. Can you stick it to me? We will find out on this particular live stream. Simply click on the StreamYard to participate and share your thoughts, questions, and insights and anything that is LDS related. Engage in lively discussions and explore diverse perspectives within Mormonism with this one-of-a-kind call-in show. Now, while we're waiting for anyone to hang out with us, I do have some things that I would like to discuss. First of all, let's take a look at all of the shorts that I've released onto this channel, which is an absolute onslaught of content. No one comes close to the sheer number of shorts that I am cranking out, and they are all top tier. So what we're going to do while we're waiting for people is we're going to review some of these shorts one at a time. Ooh, I got to go live on my Instagram to make sure I got that. Henry Eyring. And let's queue up some of these shorts. This is going to be a short review here of all of the shorts that I've done in the recent past. He is a prominent Mormon leader, but he presents an example that absolutely no one should emulate. Unlike the missionaries he Eyring himself never went on a mission, yet now he commands young men and even some young women to dedicate years of their lives in service. Now, what a hypocrite. He never went on a mission himself, and yet he's going to tell you that God told him that you are not just that you're not just encouraged to go, but he is commanding you in the name of Almighty God to go on a mission, and yet he didn't go on when it was his turn. That's called hypocrisy, folks. Furthermore, as a former business academic and church administrator, Eyring played a significant role in the Ensign Peak Advisor scandal. Most likely, he was the mastermind behind the Ensign Peak scandal, which I would really rather call a sham. His name is on the incorporation documents of Ensign Peak Advisors in 1997, and he was a member of the presiding bishopric. At that time, he had direct knowledge of the scam that the church was running. His leadership coincided with efforts to obscure billions in church assets, effectively encouraging members to continue donating without transparency. Right, this is the whole part of the Ensign Peak scam here, is that you were donating to the cause. And the whole reason that the scam was engineered is because Roger Clark said that the church leaders, including Eyring himself, presumably said that they never wanted to give people a reason not to donate. And if the church members knew how much the church had, then some of them would not donate. And that's exactly what we've seen today, is that anecdotal evidence from the Widow's Mite report and other sources indicate that the total percentage of people who are paying tithing and the total tithing receipts is on the decline now that people understand that the church is worth approximately $300 billion. Eyring understood all of this, which is why he is a diabolical scammer. The former business professor knew exactly what laws he was breaking when he engineered one of the largest charity scams in world history. Right. The dude's got a PhD in business. He taught at Stanford University. I think his PhD is also from Stanford. And you're going to tell me that he didn't know what the hell he was doing when he created fake shell companies to defraud the members and the federal government? Give me a fetch and break. Notably, honesty is a topic that Henry now sidesteps in his Tearfield General Conference talks. Yeah, this is the amusing thing, is people have brought up the fact that Henry Eyring, if you go back and look at his conference addresses, the word honesty never appears, or rarely, rarely appears in his conference addresses anymore. And I wonder why that is. It's because he's not honest in his dealings with his fellow man. Now, the most ironic thing about church leadership, especially the first presidency, is that they are totally unaccountable, and they have temple recommends that do not expire. They are signed by themselves. Henry Eyring signs his own temple recommend. So he never has to sit down in front of a judge in Israel and talk about whether he is honest in his dealings with his fellow man, because he clearly is not. Perhaps aware of his own profound contradictions, at least he has a shred of self-awareness buried in his deep-rooted hypocrisy. Yeah, the shred of self-awareness is that he really understands deep down that he's a liar through and through. And so he doesn't talk about honesty and integrity in his general conference talks anymore. How anyone could possibly look to him as a moral leader is absolutely beyond explanation. It defies all logic. And I could never follow someone like Henry Eyring. If that is what constitutes a special witness of Jesus, I will take a rain check. Let's continue this train. If anybody wants to join the show, you are certainly welcome to do so. This next short is very controversial. I said why David Bednar is my favorite Mormon apostle, which I am certain that some people will disagree. A lot of people have a significant amount of loathing for David Bednar, and he has earned that reputation very, very clearly. But I think he is my favorite, not because of his sparkling personality, not because of his incredible insights into the human condition, but simply for the fact that he is willing to give us more information about Mormon Incorporated than any other senior leader. And that is very valuable to me, even though what he gives to us is just a shadow of what should be given to us, since the Mormon Incorporated is so not transparent at all. He is my favorite apostle. And the people who, when I released this short, they would routinely say, David Bednar, I hate his guts, blah, blah, blah. Look, who is your favorite apostle then? You don't like David Bednar? Then tell me who's your favorite one, okay? Because a lot of ex-Mormons say, well, burn them all to the ground. Well, there's got to be a favorite, and he's my favorite. He is the worst. He's the best of the worst. We'll just put it that way. David Bednar, often lovingly referred to as Susan's husband, is my favorite Mormon apostle. And for those of you who are not in the know, Susan is David's wife. And there was once he was giving a speech somewhere, and it listed all of David Bednar's accolades, which are actually quite significant. He has a PhD as well, and he was a business administrator in Arkansas. He's got a pretty good business record. And it listed all of the amazing things that he has supposedly done. He's been the president of BYU Idaho. And after all of that, then at the bottom it said, and Susan will be there too. See, women are an afterthought in Mormonism. That's why actually it said David's husband will be there too. It didn't even name her, which her name is Susan. That's why he's gotten the nickname as Susan's husband. So that's just a little bit of backstory for you. With a personality often described as robotic, but a style I find refreshingly direct. Set to be a future generational LDS prophet if his health holds, Bednar has shared a glimpse into his life with videos like A Day in the Life of David Bednar, and has even hosted live Q&As on Instagram Live. Right, these days in the life of David Bednar, again, are very valuable. We get to see him behind the scenes at church headquarters. Now, these are highly curated, but that is better than nothing. We've never seen anything like that before. And the live Q&A sessions that he did on Instagram Live, and he's done a couple of those sessions as well, those are most likely curated questions, which is presumably what he also does in state conferences when he takes questions. But he is at least willing to answer some questions. People like Melvin Ballard, the late Melvin Ballard, or others are seriously never willing to take any questions whatsoever in a public sphere from any journalist whatsoever. These guys are cowards when it comes to interacting with the media. At least David Bednar is willing to stick his neck out a tiny centimeter, showing an effort to connect, if still somewhat woodenly. His occasional bluntness, while sometimes polarizing, has earned him respect for addressing tough questions others might avoid entirely. Though the transparency of the Mormon Church remains deeply problematic, Bednar's willingness to answer questions directly, whether in state conference or even with national media, offers a small but notable contrast to the institution's usual guardedness. Right. So here we see David Bednar at the National Press Club briefing, which is in 2022. He was invited to give the address there at the National Press Club, which, by the way, Gordon Hinckley did about 20 years earlier, and there hasn't been a Mormon apostle who's done it since. He sat there while he took questions from a journalist, which, by the way, I presume that the questions that he took while he was at the National Press Club were not given to him in advance. This is a significant point here, and this is the last time that a Mormon apostle that I'm aware of, and I track this space pretty carefully, has taken a question from a journalist that wasn't a real question from a journalist that wasn't a softball. Okay, so that's a serious amount of that's good. Now, I don't think he did a very good job in answering the questions, but at least he was willing to take the questions. Susan's husband's direct approach brings a shred of openness, and his leadership style may inspire younger generations seeking more accountability, making him, for me, a standout figure among church leaders. Yes, and he is said to be a future generational prophet, assuming that his health holds up, which, for all intents and purposes, I believe that his health does show up, although we are given very little information about the health of senior church leaders. That is a closely guarded secret. And sometimes when they die, we have no idea that there was something that was even amiss. That's because there's an opaque shroud that covers these gentlemen. You can never figure out what they're doing. We don't know where they're going. Their calendars are not released. They're generally not available to the public. At least David Bednar is a minor exception in taking a few questions in state conferences and in other settings. For me, that makes him a very valuable, that makes him my favorite apostle. Okay. Let's keep on going. Like I said, I got shorts. I've got the content, folks. No one brings the content like me. Absolutely no one. Spending tens of billions of dollars on LDS temples is a profound waste. There's no evidence that the Masonic-inspired rituals performed in these lavish buildings have any eternal impact or measurable societal benefit. See, and this is what some people would say, well, can you prove that the rituals in the temple aren't eternal? This is a horrific argument. We don't suppose that something has some type of eternal significance and then spend tens of billions of dollars doing them just because they cannot be falsified. That is a horrific epistemology. I've seen absolutely no demonstration whatsoever that the Masonic rituals that are in LDS temples have any salvific efficacy whatsoever. Until such time as that burden of proof has been met, any penny that is put into an LDS temple is a profound waste. And let's not forget that who we're doing these rituals for. Adolf Hitler has been baptized and confirmed. That's disgusting. He's going to be in the Mormon afterlife. Give me a break. Anne Frank has been baptized more than 10 times into the Mormon afterlife. That's absolutely reprehensible. She died for her Jewish faith, and now she's going to be a Mormon in the afterlife. Give me a break. I do have a short that's coming out about Anne Frank that's coming out soon. And I also have content that's about Adolf Hitler on this channel as well, and the absolutely reprehensible idea that he is going to be in Mormon heaven. Each temple costs tens of millions so that people can go through these same rituals over and over again by proxy for figures like Adolf Hitler, Vlad the Impaler, and even Holocaust victims. Shout out to Vlad the Impaler. Whenever I mention Hitler, I always shout out to Vlad, raising serious ethical questions. Rational skepticism suggests we should demand evidence before investing so much time and treasure into something so costly and allegedly supernatural. Exactly. The Mormon Church has spent or committed to spend approximately $15 billion total on all of its 400 announced temples. That is a significant waste of time, talent, and treasure on this planet. There are billions of people who are suffering in poverty today who need that, who need resources, who need help. And there's millions of people who starve to death every single year. And yet we're putting these into these esoteric castles. That's a profound waste. And even according to Mormon theology, I argue that it is wasteful because in the millennium, which is after Jesus splits the Mount of Olives in two and comes to reign in, wait for it, Jackson County, Missouri, along side by side with President Nelson over the people who haven't been burned up by fire because they didn't pay into Ensign Peak. Hey, welcome to the program, Change K. Thanks for Vlad the Impaler. Great name. Looking for the same pithy moniker for me. Hey, thanks so much for joining the program. It's just a profound waste of time. The church spends approximately $250 million a year in temple maintenance alone. Imagine if you had $250 million, how much actual good you could do with that sum. I guarantee that whatever you decided would be a better usage of funds than plowing them into temples, into communities in which a lot of these communities don't even want them to be there to begin with. What a profound and disgusting waste of resources. If there's no proof these ceremonies have real world or eternal spiritual efficacy, then why pour billions into them? Until evidence emerges, it seems misguided to waste so much tithing on rituals rooted more in Masonic tradition than tangible benefit. Exactly. That's what rational skepticism is all about. Until such time as we have good evidence that anything in a temple does anything for anyone, then there's a profound waste of resources. Okay, the totality of the church has all of their temples put together. If you add up the price tags of everything that's been announced, is approximately $13.5 billion. That's a horrible, horrible waste of resources. Okay, let's continue this train going. Let's talk about my motivation for this channel. All of these have been released, by the way, in the last little bit. I released 2 shorts every single day on this channel, on noon and at midnight. Hey, some guy out there, thanks so much for joining the program. I appreciate you dropping by. If anybody wants to talk anything Mormon related, they can follow the link that is in the description, and you can join me on this show. My motives for making this podcast are 100% irrelevant. But all too often, when faithful Latter-day Saints watch one of my videos, instead of discussing the actual issues, they just want to focus on me. They love to unleash untrained psychoanalysis at a distance, trying to figure me out. This is incredibly common, and actually, I'm quite embarrassed that it appears that I am wearing the same shirt now that I had in this short. What can I tell you? My mom doesn't let me out of the basement too often. But this is a very common tactic. As soon as they come in, they want to psychoanalyze me. They want to try to figure me out. They never want to talk about content, or if they do, there's poor apologetics. Hey, Scott, thanks so much for joining the program here. Longtime listener and watcher. Great. Why have you let this dictate your sanity? I totally feel your moments, but you've been slipping this year into the deep. Oh, I don't know about that. My sanity, I think, is in check. Speaking of psychoanalysis, I'm happy with my sanity. I tend to bring the snark. And like I said, my moniker here is Blasphemy Unleashed, and I'm definitely going to bring the heat. Their arguments quickly devolve into wild speculation, deflection, and personal attacks that contribute nothing of substance to the conversation. Exactly. And Scott, quite frankly, is an example of this. They always want to question my sanity. There must be something wrong with you, D-Vase. This is all about me. No, this isn't all about me. The only thing that matters is the truth, which is what this short is going to bring out. T. Grogan, thanks so much for joining the program. All Christians or other religions do this. You are scaring their reptile brains. You know, that's the thing about it is that that's what religion really does to a person is it disrupts cognition. It interrupts critical thinking and it replaces truth with falsehood. I will be speaking out against religion until my dying breath, I imagine. Of course, there could simply change all of this. It's so easy to change all of this. Just show the truthfulness of any religion, and I will be the first one to join. And I'm not aware of any truth to any religion whatsoever. This short in particular talks about my motivations. Let's see here. Change Capability Institute. I was creeped out by the endowment when I first encountered it. Yes, you and me. I later became a veil worker. Interesting. I never saw the value. After deconstruction, I couldn't get the garments off fast enough. That is certainly a sentiment that I can definitely appreciate. Thanks so much for dropping by the program. That's honestly sad. It doesn't matter if I have an axe to grind. It doesn't matter if I'm in it for the money. It doesn't matter if someone supposedly offended me. And it doesn't matter if I'm the biggest hypocrite in the world. Yeah, they always want to talk about my hypocrisy, especially since I critique church finances quite a bit. They say, well, how much have you donated? How many hours have you given? That is completely irrelevant. The criticism of the church for the fact that it has incredibly deep pockets but incredibly short arms is valid in and of itself, despite whatever charity that I do or do not give. Okay, my motivations they're completely irrelevant. Let's say that I only created this channel to make money, which is a farce because if you go back and look at my 2-year anniversary special, you'll see how much money I lost making this podcast. Give me a break. But let's say that I was in it for the money. Does that somehow invalidate my criticisms? Does that somehow mean that whatever arguments that I make that are sound and reasonable, therefore are to be dismissed? Absolutely not. The only thing that matters is truth, not motivations. None of that matters. Listen up, Kool-Aid drinkers. The only thing that really matters is the truth. If you're so convinced your beliefs can withstand scrutiny, why waste time debating my motives? And since the critiques on this channel are valid, deal with it. You tell them, D-Vase, since the critiques on this channel are valid, deal with it. See, what's always amazing to me is when people come in and they will leave a one sentence, oh, that's not true. And you're like, what isn't? What's not true? What's the receipts here? And I had somebody just the other day who said, you know what? Robert Boylan could debunk you. Well, what part of me could be debunked, by the way? I'm not sure about that. So as T. Grogan said, no person acts without motive, for sure. I am an incredibly biased individual, okay? I have a deep set of biases. I don't pretend to be fair and balanced. This is an editorial show, okay? I'm not going to show both sides of the issue. And for the simple fact of the matter is, I mostly talk about contemporaneous LDS news. The church spends tens of millions, maybe, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars on its propaganda arms, both at the BYU Motion Picture Studio, KSL, Deseret News, the church news. And they pump out the propaganda with these slick propaganda videos. Okay, I don't need to cover what they're doing for their shiny propaganda. I need to show the parts that they are not willing to talk about. So there's your bias for you right there. Authentically, Kristen, thanks so much for dropping by. They were robbing us blind. They certainly were. And where's Jacob Hansen? He challenged me to a debate, and he has run off into the shadows. I have dismissed him without further argument. Scott, I like the snark and the goofy passion dude just trying to look out. Hey, I appreciate you. If you like snark and goofy passion, you have definitely come to the right place because I bring that in spades. Appreciate all of you dropping by. I haven't done one of these in a long time. If you want to talk to me, you can follow the link on StreamYard and you can stick it to me or Stump the Chump, whatever it is that you want to talk about, as long as it is Mormon related, I am happy to discuss it with you. At this time, I have about an hour left before I have to pack things up, but I have much more content. Let's keep on going here. This next short here, folks, I talk about why I actually rarely ask for donations on this podcast. If you watch any of my shorts, in none of my shorts have I ever asked for 1 single cent. And in a lot of my content, I don't ask for donations whatsoever. And here is the reason why in this short. I rarely ask for donations on the Mormon News Roundup, and here's 3 reasons why. First, the simple fact of the matter is that I don't really need them. While I greatly appreciate my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members, I've worked hard my entire life and done pretty well for myself. Not to mention the fact that I came from a family of some means. Yeah, some people, when they said came from a family of some means, which is true. My dad was a dentist. My mother was a school teacher, and we did have some means, although there are some serious bumps along the road. Some people now say that I'm some kind of a trust fund baby. Give me a fetch and break. I'm merely acknowledging the fact that I wasn't born in a place that had low socioeconomic status. I wasn't born in sub-Saharan Africa, and I wasn't born in a Mumbai slum. That affects my ability to generate content. And it also affects the fact that I don't need the donations as much as some other people would need donations. I rarely ask for them, and I kind of feel sheepish every single time that I do. Okay, so I'm just trying to be honest with you. And people who want to talk about motivations, I'm trying to give you some of my motivations here. T. Grogan, the critical thinking Mormons have already left the church. What you have left is people with zero critical thinking skills, natural selection in reverse. Absolutely. The faith and critical thinking are are not good bedfellows at all. They have nothing whatsoever to do with each other. Faith is the suspension of critical thinking. You don't use critical thinking to arrive, for instance, at the idea that the Trinity is real. 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 1. You've suspended critical thinking if you're going to go down that realm. And if you want to believe in a magic anthropomorphic immoral who's completely invisible and hasn't materialized in reality, for which you cannot demonstrate a relationship, I argue that you have not used critical thinking to arrive to that decision either. Let's continue on with the short. Second, there are people who need your potential donations far more than I do. Yeah. There are people who don't have enough food to eat, safe places to sleep, access to medical care, or who face horrific war-torn conditions. And third, this channel is mostly dedicated to criticizing the Mormon Church. And here's the point. The church has done relatively little with its vast financial resources to alleviate human suffering. I can't in good conscience place this channel ahead of suffering people without betraying a serious level of hypocrisy that would erode my credibility in critiquing the church's pathetically short arms. See, and this is the whole thing. I asked the question, every single one of these shorts, you will see that I ask a question that goes along with them typically in the comment section. And the question that I've asked here is it ethical for this channel to ask for donations when so many other people are in suffering? And this is the real, I'm really conflicted about that. I'm supposed to ask for a donation while people don't have access to clean water, while people don't have a safe place to live, while people don't have good medical care, where people can't educate their children, et cetera, et cetera. I'm supposed to ask for a donation while people are suffering and starving to death for a podcast that is rather limited in scope. How am I supposed to be able to do that ethically? And like I said in the short, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is worth $300 billion. And in 2023, the church claimed that it gave out $1.4 billion in humanitarian giving. Even if we take the church's mostly unsubstantiated claim at face value, that's still less than 0.5%. And so I'm going to critique that. And yet, if I don't need the money, just like the church doesn't need people's tithing, do you see how the hypocrisy really runs deep if I'm trying to ask for donations? And I'm gonna say this right out here. A lot of these other podcasters out there, they also don't need the money. Okay. And yet they're asking for it constantly. I question the people who have channels, podcasts, YouTube channels that are critiquing the Mormon Church, especially with regards to finances, who are then turning around and constantly asking for donations. How does that not erode some of your credibility with regards to your critique of Mormon Church finances when they know and you know and I know that a lot of people needed a hell of a lot more than I do or they do? That's criticism I think is very, very valid. Hey, Garrick, thanks so much for joining the program. You're a channel member, and I do appreciate that. Speaking of channel members, I only have one membership option on the Mormon News Roundup, and it's $5 a month. I don't have anything higher than that because I think that that's more than enough. People in Plato's cave fight for their own relative social relativism, dynamic and authority to stay in their reality of the cave. Absolutely, they do. People don't want to have their lives disrupted. There's an incredible sunk cost fallacy that's associated with all religion. Typically, you've dedicated years of your life. You put in tons of time and treasure. You've indoctrinated your children, you've built your life around something, you are typically then not incentivized to try to figure out if your beliefs are probably true or in reality true. It is better to believe, it's more comforting to believe a lie in many cases than to believe the truth. And T. Grogan, one more. The Mormon Church could take $5 billion and establish a world-class cancer research center in Utah. It would boost the image of the church tremendously. Well, it's interesting that you say that, T. Grogan, because the church did announce at BYU that they are building a medical center at BYU of a significant amount that will include the ability for BYU students to have medical degrees. And then the focus of the BYU hospital will be on international aid to other people. So I don't know how much the investment of that hospital is going to be, but I imagine it is going to be substantial. I wouldn't be surprised at all if a hospital like that, a big medical center with an accompanying hospital, would be $200 million. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Now, the church spends for all of its BYUs a little over $1 billion a year, but that is a significant investment for the church, and they should be given kudos for that, which I will do anytime that the church does something good. I try to give them the kudos that they deserve. Let's continue the pain and the suffering. Let's continue this train. This is the great thing about having as much content as I have, is that I can never tire of watching myself. I have my sights set on becoming the king of Mormon / ex-Mormon YouTubing. I currently have about 1,500 videos on this channel, but I intend to double that at least. What's amusing is that I released this onto TikTok. See, you can follow the Mormon News Roundup. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we are also on X, and we're also on Facebook. Now, I haven't released every single one of my long form videos onto TikTok or Instagram. I only released the shorts onto there. And somebody watched it and said, "Oh, you don't have 1,500 videos on Instagram, you freaking liar." And I'm like, look, the main channel here is on YouTube. That's where I put all of the content on there. Everything else doesn't necessarily get onto all of the other channels that I have. I have almost 300 videos already made and in my queue. An avalanche of top tier content. There's a number of LDS channels out there who have between 2,000 and 3,000 videos on YouTube, but I'm putting them on notice right now that I am coming for all of them. The Mormon News Roundup channel releases about 100 videos a month, 3 times a day, noon, midnight, and 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And folks, there's no plans to ease up. I'm not going to stop until I stand alone at the top of the Mormon YouTube mountain. The stone has been cut out of the mountain without hands. The standard of truth has been erected. And remember, no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing. And that's the tagline of the show. This is an ode to Joseph Smith's Standard of Truth has been erected, which has been nicknamed the Standard of Truth. It was something that we used to recite as missionaries all the time when I served my mission in Washington, D.C. in the 1990s. I basically co-opted that for this channel, that no unhallowed hand can stop the Mormon News Roundup from progressing. And this is an ode to Daniel in the book of Daniel, where he interprets King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, where King Nebuchadnezzar saw a stone that was cut out of the mountain without hands that was supposed to roll forth and fill the whole earth. Joseph Smith interpreted the church as that stone that was cut out of the mountain without hands. But the problem is that the church growth for the last decade, every single year, the church growth has been less and less and less. It is probable, in my opinion, that the church is not growing at all. Really, I really think that the Mormon shrivel has been confirmed. Now, as far as my ambitions here to become the king of Mormon YouTube, I am releasing a new. I just recorded this yesterday, which is who is the king of Mormon YouTube, LDS YouTubing. And I go through the top 6 largest channels in ex-Mormon and Mormon podcasting. And I talk about how far I am away from overtaking them and whether it is possible that I will one day retire on the top of the mountain. I'm going to be releasing that soon. So stay tuned for that. Let's catch up with a couple of comments here. I think the church promising to use tithing for charity and not is different than us helping you out when you are helping us with deconstruction and helping our lives. You could if you wanted. Yeah, I don't know about that. I appreciate the sentiment here. Of course, when it comes to the church's tithing, they tell you that if you don't pay tithing to the church, then you will be burned by apocalyptic fire when Jesus comes again. This is the sick litmus test that Mormonism gives to you. When Jesus supposedly comes back for his impossible return to, wait for it, Jackson County, Missouri, the litmus test as to whether your face will be burnt off of your face, the flesh will be burnt off of your face, is whether you fed the illegal clandestine hedge fund at Salt Lake City known as Ensign Peak Advisors. What kind of a sick God sets up a paradigm like that? Are you absolutely kidding me? It's not whether you were a good person. It's not whether you helped others. And it's not whether you were even believed in God. It's whether you gave money to Mormonism. That is a sick, sick joke. As far as being on the top of the YouTube mountain, you're going to have to wait for that episode to come out before I tell you what happened there. But I do want to go out as the king, and I've got plans to do it. Next up, Mormon Apostle M. Russell Ballard. Is he sketchy? I think most of you know the answer to that. The late M. Russell Ballard, a high-ranking Mormon apostle, has a controversial history. His business practices have raised questions, including a past SEC revocation of his credentials for questionable practices in penny stock trading. What an absolute atrocity that anyone whose credentials were revoked by the SEC would end up as a Mormon apostle. He was a scammer back in the day. This is like the 1960s when the penny stocks in Salt Lake City were a thing, and he had very questionable practices, got his SEC license to be able to trade these penny stocks revoked, and then he became a Mormon apostle. It's only because of, in my opinion, nepotism. He has the blood of the prophets in his vein, as he is I think the 5th great grandson of Hiram Smith, as memory serves. What an absolute scammer. There are credible reports of him pressuring faithful Latter-day Saints to donate millions of dollars to Tim Ballard, a figure later disgraced in the child rescuing industry. Right, exactly. So we have M. Russell Ballard telling faithful Mormons to donate to Tim Ballard. By the way, there's no relationship between these two. And it turns out that Tim Ballard, we don't have any good evidence that he rescued anyone. He's the person who the Sound of Freedom movie came out two summers ago. And M. Russell Ballard is pressuring millionaire Mormons to donate to Tim Ballard, who was later credibly accused of sexual assault, sexual harassment. He was leaking tithing records. What an absolute crock of a leader. Throughout the decades, Ballard has also stood by as the Mormon Church did relatively little in the humanitarian sector, sparking criticism for its lack of impactful efforts to alleviate human suffering. Right, we have the very important quote here from Dallin Oaks, where he said that for a period of approximately 30 years, this is approximately, I don't know, about 1970 to 2000, that the church on average gave away only $40 million a year during that time frame, only $1.2 billion over a period of 30 years. That is a shamefully low level of giving, especially considering the fact that when Ensign Peak Advisors was founded in 1997, it was seeded with $7 billion. And by the time of 2000, the church was with $40 billion. So at the same time that the church is worth $40 billion, it's only giving away $40 million. That's 1/1000th of its total wealth. What a shockingly low level of humanitarian output. And M. Russell Ballard was there for every last moment of it. As acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, Ballard was in a leadership position when the Mormon Church was fined by the federal government for improperly concealing billions in assets. So we have M. Russell Ballard here. Not only was the SEC has been watching Melvin for many years, all the way back from when he was a scammer doing penny stocks to then he was the acting president of the Quorum of the 12, or he might have been the actual president of the Quorum of the 12. I think he was acting when the church, once again, the SEC came knocking. It seems like wherever Melvin goes, the SEC is right behind him, looking over his shoulder to point out his fraudulent and illegal activities. What an absolute atrocity it is that someone would try to sustain someone like this. Oh, and Melvin was never held accountable for any of his sketchy actions. If this is what constitutes a special witness of Jesus, I will take a rain check. Yeah, this is what we're supposed to sustain and raise our hands to the square is for a scammer like this. You need to go back for anyone out there and look at Lynn Packer's very credible reporting on Melvin Ballard's incredibly shady history. I just touched on a little bit of it in this short, but Lynn Packer is not some conspiracy theorist. He's a dedicated and vaunted and award-winning journalist, and he absolutely laid into Melvin for what a scammer and a shyster he absolutely was. It was absolutely reprehensible. Some guy, this moment brought to you by my brain 6 months ago before I started deconstruction. I can't believe that I trust Mormon News Roundup more than prophets and apostles. Mind blown. Some guy, you may need to follow better podcasters out there. That's all I can say. You're giving me far too much credit, but I do appreciate the sentiment. Now, next up here is where I take on the Christians themselves. This is the if you look at this T-shirt, it says, "It's been 2,000 years. He's not coming back. Get over it." By the way, if anybody wants to join this program, all you have to do is follow the link that's in the description from StreamYard, and you can join me on air, and we can talk anything Mormon related. Waiting and wasting one's entire life for Jesus' supposed return is a fool's errand. Think about how many tens of billions of people have wasted their lives believing that the failed apocalyptic preacher who was born in Palestine would come back during their lives. Every single last one of them died disappointed. How many billions of people do you think have wasted their lives for Jesus' impossible return? How many? We've had approximately 120 billion people who have lived on planet Earth, depending on what you consider to be a Homo sapien, but that's a typical number. How many tens of billions of them have wasted their lives waiting for Jesus' return, which was always supposed to be right around the corner, and yet they didn't do it? And how many more will waste their one and only life that we have knowledge of, waiting for this failed apocalyptic preacher's impossible return? When Jesus was on earth, he consistently said that he would be returning in short order. He said that people in this generation would not pass away before he came back, and yet it's been 2,000 years, which is why the title of the short is, which is why that t-shirt is, it's been 2,000 years, he's not coming back, get over it. Okay, so let's continue on. Besides, what good evidence is there that Jesus will return in great glory? In all of history, not a single confirmed dead person has ever come back years later to do anything. Yeah, we have absolutely no good evidence for Jesus' supposed resurrection. What we have are copies of oral translations written decades after the fact by non-eyewitnesses who are incredibly biased. And those accounts are filled with contradictions, pseudoscience, laughable fairy tales, and complete nonsense. That is the evidence that we're supposed to take for Jesus' supposed resurrection. The resurrection no reasonable and rational critical thinking person can come to the conclusion that we have enough evidence to conclude that Jesus was resurrected, much less the additional idea that he will come back again. None of this has met its burden of proof. Absolutely none of it. Friends, we only get one life, and spending it in pathetic anticipation of an imaginary friend's supposed return is a tragic waste. Amen. Your incredible life is happening right now with real experiences, beautiful relationships, and hopefully exciting opportunities. Life is amazing. Rather than holding out for something that's never been proven and for which we have no good evidence, isn't it time to focus on living fully in the here and now? It absolutely is time to live in the here and now. If you look at the comments section of this particular video, you will see all kinds of people who talk about how they believe in Jesus. You need to pray to Jesus and you need Jesus. What will happen to you after you die? That wasn't the point of it. Well, you'll eat your words when you die. See, this is the amazing thing here. Where's the evidence? That's what I'm looking for. I know that you have a faith-based belief, but I can't believe in absolute nonsense and contradictions and absurdities for no good reason, based on copies of oral translations where we don't even have the original manuscripts. We don't even have eyewitnesses here. Mark didn't write Mark. Matthew didn't write Matthew. Luke didn't write Luke. And John didn't write John. And this is the point. Even if they did, that wouldn't make it true. I'm supposed to base my life on this? See, this is the difference between you and me, theist. I can't believe in laughable absurdities for no good reason and despite all evidence to the contrary. I understand the burden of proof. And Jesus' resurrection has not met the burden of proof, and it can't meet the burden of proof unless we get some kind of an infusion of additional evidence, which, wait for it, it's been 2,000 years, we're not going to get to. And this was the whole point of the short. How many people really do you think have wasted their lives waiting for Jesus to come back? And what good evidence is there? And what we get in the comment section is not anyone who's going to deal with that rationally. What we're going to get is just faith-based beliefs, and faith is not a reliable pathway to truth. We're going to get emotional appeals. We're going to get presuppositional nonsense. We're going to get nothing but bald-faced assertions and emotional appeals, none of which should be convincing to anyone, even the person making those claims. It shouldn't be convincing to absolutely anyone. And it's just like some guy said, truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. This can be found in Matthew 24. And you have to go through backflips here to try to say, well, the generation didn't mean generation. The scriptures never mean what they mean when they fail. And what we have in the Bible is that it was disproved yesterday. Okay. It's not anything that anyone should take as authoritative in any capacity. Let's talk about the Deseret Management Corporation. Deseret Management Corporation is the shadowy umbrella corporation of the Mormon Church's vast commercial empire. DMC is a private company and the for-profit arm of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, overseeing a diverse portfolio of businesses in media, finance, real estate, hospitality, and more. See, and this is the thing about Deseret Management Corporation. We don't know how much money. We really don't have any idea how much money these for-profit companies take in. So this is the last gap in knowledge for Mormon finances. We now know how much tithing the church brings in every year. It's about $67 billion. We now know how much money is in Ensign Peak because of David Nielsen and Lars Nielsen. It's currently sitting at approximately $200 billion. Thanks to people like Ryan McKnight and Ethan Dodge of the Truth and Transparency Foundation, who first broke the news about the church's real estate portfolio, we now understand that the church's real estate portfolio is worth about $105 billion. We understand all of these things pretty well now. The one thing that we still don't know is how much does Bonneville Communications bring in? How much money does KSL make, if any, by the way? Some of these church-owned companies, which are mostly propaganda arms of the church, they may not even make money. We don't have good answers to any of it, not even close. Can't even really estimate it. When you look at the Widows Might Report or others, they won't even speculate on it because this is the last black box of the church. And the Deseret Management Corporation, pardon me, the Deseret Management Corporation is the umbrella corporation that all of the church's for-profit entities roll up under, including Ag Reserves, including Farm Reserves, including the Polynesian Cultural Center, including all of the church's dozens of for-profit companies. Okay, how much money does Deseret Management Corporation actually bring in to the totality of the church's for-profit endeavors? No, I can't even venture a guess. I can't even give you the slightest guess. And I don't think anyone else can who's not a church insider. This is the last part of the church financial puzzle that we are still waiting on. And we need a whistleblower for that. See, David Nielsen didn't have access. The whistleblowers that we've had Ryan McKnight, we've had Ethan Dodge, we've had David Nielsen. We've had a couple of unnamed whistleblowers as well who helped tie in the church's shell companies in the Ensign Peak scam back to church headquarters. Those people are unnamed, but none of those people had access to Deseret Man DM, the DMC. Okay, so we're still waiting for a whistleblower there. Established in 1966, DMC manages subsidiaries such as the Deseret News, Bonneville International, which is a broadcasting company, and Deseret Book, among many others. The corporation aims to operate according to LDS values while maintaining profitability and growth, generating funds that ultimately support church operations and initiatives. However, its activities have often sparked discussions about the LDS Church's financial interests and its extensive influence in various industries. As DMC continues to grow, some question the transparency and scale of this wealth. See, private corporations like DMC, they're not required to have any public disclosure. See, Ensign Peak Advisors, once it went over $100 million in total holdings, it's required to give disclosures. And there are some public filings that are available for certain non-for-profit corporations, like Ensign Peak has to file the 990s as a non-profit corporation, which talks about its total wealth. For-profit companies don't have to do any of that. So we don't have any, to my knowledge, we don't have any insight whatsoever into Deseret Management Corporation. Just literally none. Does Jesus really need an opaque for-profit arm to help stockpile hundreds of billions in a sacred slush fund? Right, that was the question. See, I usually end my shorts with an important question because I want it to guide the conversation. And what you get with believers is that they will never answer the question that I posed. Let's hear that question one more time. The transparency and scale of this wealth. Does Jesus really need an opaque for-profit arm to help stockpile hundreds of billions in a sacred slush fund? Right, that's the question. Does Jesus really need an opaque for-profit arm, corporation, to stockpile hundreds of billions into a sacred slush fund for his return? And nobody wants to answer that question because the obvious answer to that question is, why the hell would he, even if he were to come back, why the hell would he need hundreds of billions of dollars? Hey, thanks a lot for stopping by here, Lewis. I can accept the possibility that what I believe might not be 100% correct, but how do you not consider it arrogance to be absolutely certain that I never said that I was certain that Jesus wouldn't return? What I was very careful with what I said here, Lewis, is that we have absolutely no good evidence of Jesus's resurrection, and we have no good evidence that he will return. I never said that I was 100% certain. I'm not convinced that we can be 100% certain of anything. So what you're setting up here is a straw man argument saying, well, if you can't be 100% certain that he won't come back, therefore you're not justified in rejecting it. This is a fallacious line of reasoning. Garrick, a question to DVs. Are you LDS Mormonism, or are you more for your people to have a better collected future, or you roll back the church? So this is a very, very complicated question, Garrick, and I've given this a huge amount of thought. When it comes to my position as to whether people should leave the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is what I really think that you're asking about, I've given this a huge amount of thought. First of all, I'm anti-religion at all. There's no substance to religion. There's no religion that I'm aware of has ever met its burden of proof for providing evidence of its supernatural claims. The world, it appears in my mind, would be a far better place without any religious dogma gumming up people's minds. Okay, I don't see any foundational truths to Mormonism whatsoever. So in my mind, it would be much better if the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints did not exist. However, there's a small percentage of the people who are members of the church who will only engage in charitable activities if they do believe that a celestial dictator is listening to their every thought and watching their every move. It is better for society for those people to remain in religion if the only reason that they do something good is because they want to please their celestial dictator. Then it is better that those people stay in those religions, because if they were to leave those religions, they wouldn't do anything of good for any other person. So those people should stay in the church. And there's also a small percentage of people who only avoid doing evil actions like raping, killing, stabbing, and torturing and cheating others because they fear an eternal punishment. Whether that eternal punishment is real or not is irrelevant for this particular line of inquiry. Those people, it is better for society for those people to stay in religion as well. The vast majority of people on this planet would be better off without any religion whatsoever gumming up their critical thinking. But as I said, there are some exceptions. So I'm not for a wholesale burn down Mormonism, because those people who, as I mentioned before, that are better off in it should remain in Mormonism. That would be better for our society as a whole. Some guy out there, when I was a TBM and I just read the headlines about the church SEC without even reading, I ignorantly assumed some accountant just made a mistake in complicated IRS code. My, how things have changed. And this is one of the apologetics that you often get. And it's because of the church's incredibly duplicitous statement that it released as a question and answer the day after the fine was levied. In the joint settlement between the SEC and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, accountants weren't mentioned at all. Lawyers weren't mentioned at all. And that's because this wasn't an accountant issue. This wasn't a lawyer issue. It's over and over again hammered home in the joint settlement agreement that this was senior church leaders engaging in a scam for generations. And the church wanted to go out later and insinuate that it was an accountant or a lawyer problem. That is disingenuous and typical church gaslighting. Let's keep on going. Sound of Freedom. Speaking of Tim Ballard, Sound of Freedom tells the story of Tim Ballard, played by Jim Caviezel, a former U.S. government agent who embarks on a mission to rescue children from human trafficking. This film, with its intense and suspenseful scenes, has gained praise for shedding light on a serious global issue. I used the Sound of Freedom soundtrack, by the way, for this short, by the way, which is a nice little ode here. I do like this short. This was a well done short, aiming to inspire viewers to support anti-trafficking efforts. However, Ballard's real-life story on which the film is based has come under scrutiny. Investigative reports and former colleagues have raised questions about the accuracy of Ballard's rescue narratives. By the way, he's about to storm out of that particular interview as we hear here, as we're about to see, which I did cut off here. Yeah, they've raised a significant amount of questions. There have been federal lawsuits, and he's been the subject of significant consternation, with critics suggesting the film embellishes his role and impact. Right, and the film also doubles down on a narrative that sex trafficking is something that typically people are, bought and sold for. Well, what usually happens is that it's family members, not syndicates, not drug cartels that involve people in sex trafficking. It's usually someone that you know. So this film really sets up a false narrative about how sex trafficking actually works. And in some ways, it does more harm in my mind than actual good. In fact, we don't know if Ballard ever actually rescued anyone, or if the dramatic operations shown in the film even happened as depicted. See, that's the whole entire issue here. What evidence do we have that Tim Ballard rescued anyone? What we have is a lot of claims about OUR and his so-called Spear Fund, his Spear organization. But where's the actual receipts here? Who's come forward and said, I was rescued by Tim Ballard, or a family member, or here's the evidence here. I'm not aware that Tim Ballard has rescued anyone. And yet Melvin Ballard was telling faithful Mormons to send millions of dollars to Tim Ballard, who for all intents and purposes appears to be a fraudster and has been credibly accused of sexual assault and sexual assault. Where was the discernment with Melvin Ballard? Tim Ballard, in my mind, is an incredibly problematic figure. Despite these concerns, The Sound of Freedom has resonated with audiences, though some viewers are divided, debating the balance between raising awareness and possibly promoting a story with questionable foundations. See, there's a huge amount of questionable foundations with the Tim Ballard story. Of course, we want to raise awareness of the problem of sex trafficking in the world, but I don't think that Tim Ballard is the right person to put forward as the point man for this operation. How do you feel about the Sound of Freedom movie? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, I wonder what the comments do say about this. It was sketchy even before it came out. Obviously, the solution to ending trafficking is via expert law enforcement, not religious vigilantism. Exactly. The fact that it was being peddled by evangelicals and Mormons, conservative Catholics, was the cherry on top. Told me everything I needed to know. Then, of course, all the plenty of lawsuits came out against him. That is a perfect sum up. That's absolutely true. Let's hear some guy. I watched YouTube after all that happened, and he was generally looking at the cameras, denying everything. I felt the spirit. Haha. It turned out he didn't have all that spirit. How I have all that. The spirit lied to me. See, and this is the issue with the following. First of all, I don't know what a spirit is. Nobody has been able to really provide me a definition that makes any common sense whatsoever. I'm not aware of spirits, ghosts, ghouls, genies, or leprechauns, or the Loch Ness Monster. I don't know what any of these things are. So when people appeal to a spirit, I have no idea what you're talking about. But second of all, the so-called Holy Ghost appears to be, in Mormonism, in my mind, is nothing more than elevation emotion. It is a self-concocted self-delusion. See, religion is all about the self-delusion. It's auto-deceptive by nature. It's deceiving yourself using yourself. That's what is so that's what's so dangerous about religion. And Garrick, the fundamentalism is dangerous. The world is built in amorality only to prop up its own elements to power. Thanks for dropping by, guys. I'm just going to leave this at an hour today, which is I think going to be plenty. Now, I've released a number of Mormon missionary stories onto my channel for sure, and I do like those. And this next short that we're going to watch talks about whether my Mormon mission actually mattered. That's a very, very interesting question to me, and I'm going to talk about that here just in a little bit. I baptized 7 people on my Mormon mission in Washington, D.C. in the 1990s. And since my mission was before social media existed, I've often wondered how many of them are still active in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I've only been able to stay in touch with one of them who left the church shortly after his baptism. See, I really wish I had gone on a mission in the days of social media so that I could have stayed in contact with them. I have really no way to get in touch with almost anyone that I baptized. There's just no way to do so. And I've only been able to keep in touch with one, and he has left the church. Based on retention rates for Mormon convert baptism, it's likely that at maximum one is still active. I think about how much time, effort, and emotional energy I invested into my mission for just one person to join the LDS church. And here's the kicker. Maybe that person would have joined anyway, whether I served a mission or not. See, that's the whole thing here. I baptized 7 people on my mission. Using probable statistics, I would say that maybe at most one of them is still a member of the church. But here's the biggest thing. Would that person have joined the church anyway, even if I hadn't been a missionary? Would they have come across the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and just shown up at the chapel and eventually got themselves baptized, whether I was a missionary or not? So in some ways, my mission story was an absolutely profound waste of time. The misguided emphasis on numbers, baptisms, and arbitrary goals during my mission often made the work feel hollow and mechanical. In the eternal scheme of things, LDS missions feel like a huge waste of time. Yes, indeed they do, Dives. I really appreciate that. Lewis, I 100% agree that no religion has met its burden of proof of their claims. I appreciate that. I think you're being very honest about that. I do like that. Well, why not let people live by faith if it makes them better people? See, I don't go, just like I talked about in that last short, I don't fund a $1.2 billion missionary program where I send out 70,000 missionaries to go door to door to extort tithing donations from Africans under the threat of eternal punishment, all to send back to church headquarters to bolster a clandestine illegal hedge fund so that the church can buy real estate and commercial properties. Okay, I don't do any of that. You come onto this channel. If you want to hear my thoughts about Mormonism, the Mormon News Roundup, Mormon movie reviews, Real Talk Mormonism, you're certainly welcome to come here. As far as faith is concerned, faith is not a reliable pathway to truth. Faith is auto-deceptive. Faith is a crutch. And I'm going to speak out against faith every single way that I can. Humanity as a whole would be so much better off if, instead of wasting time and treasure talking about imaginary gods, fake religions, and sending money to the professors of religion who are there to really make money off of its parishioners. Imagine if we were to invest that money into ourselves. And this is the important thing here. Most religions, especially in the United States, which is where I'm based, want to prosecute their worldview in the legislature, in the courts, in our public sphere. It'd be one thing if you were just going to live your faith and burn a few candles and burn some incense in your closet on a couple of holy days and leave the rest of us alone. I don't think I would have much to say about that. But that's not the case in the United States. Now, if you want to take a look at like Shintoism or Buddhism, which are more benign religions, I think a case could be made that, yeah, there's not much arguments that could be made against Buddhism. It's mostly an internal religion where you don't try to prosecute your particular supernatural worldview onto the rest of us. That's why you don't see a lot of YouTube channels that are critiquing Buddhism. Mormonism, the end state of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is global domination. So I'm going to speak out against that. I'm a believer, but interested in having these conversations. Well, thank you so much for dropping by. I appreciate that. And some guy out there, Lewis, I don't believe anymore, but I think I've come to a more healthy place where I can respect people believing if they feel it's a good tool for them. I'd like to see more informed consent, though. Well, thanks for appreciate that. We're going to just watch maybe one or two more shorts, and we're going to call it good. This is just going to be an hour-long episode. Word radio. Let's talk about word radio here. I released this short as well, which a lot of people had a problem with. Let's see if you do too. Word radio is gaining major traction and is on track to hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of 2025. Known as the Mormon shock jocks of YouTube, the channel is unapologetically right-leaning, Trump-supporting, and conservative, with a strong following of young Latter-day Saint men who embrace over-the-top anti-feminist and anti-progressive rhetoric. See, and this is the thing about word radio. First of all, they are, in my opinion, the most entertaining live stream in Mormonism or ex-Mormonism. Hands down, bar none, no one comes close. Their show is exciting. Their show is entertaining. And you get people who are not even members, not ex-members, not current members, who just go there for the antics, for the over-the-top rhetoric, for the comedy, for the religious sophistry. They have the complete package there. Cardin Ellis stands alone as the best live streaming Mormon, ex-Mormon YouTuber alive, and it's not even close. Okay, so Word Radio does a fantastic job. The channel thrives on provocative content, blending sensationalism with sharp, quick-witted commentary that keeps its audience engaged and entertained. See, and they also rotate through a number of different co-hosts. Every single night is somebody new. I mean, he must have a Rolodex of hundreds or even thousands of people. And they just get a lot of different perspectives. Word Radio does a fantastic job as far as the entertainment quality of their particular show. They are great. And what makes this channel so captivating? Well, a big part of its success is Cardin Ellis, a master of production who hands down runs the best LDS live stream on the web. See, and he spent plenty of time in radio. He spent some time in films and even in commercials. And he spent a lot of time putting together these radio spots. He understands he understands how to package content for other people. He understands thumbnails. He understands clickbait. He understands how to run an entertaining shows. He understands how to monetize word radio. He understands how to gain subscriptions. He understands how to leverage people. He's got a Discord out there. Word Radio is doing everything right as far as gaining subscribers and having an entertaining show. Now, as far as truth is concerned, that's where they fall down on the job. Cardin's ability to blend professional visuals, engaging debates, and a commanding on-screen presence is undeniably the key to the success. Absolutely, a commanding on-screen presence. Absolutely great. His ability to cycle through camera angles, their lack of glitches, the audio production quality, the visual production quality. They've spent thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars on these studios. Okay, Cardin is the man. But I wonder why Word Radio's constant ad hominem attacks and shallow apologetics don't turn more viewers off. See, and this is where they really fall down, is if they were to stay in the pop culture, if they were to stay on the bubblegum stuff or the politics or the Trump, they're all Trump supporters, if they were to stay in that realm, that they would be untouchable. But the moment that they go into apologetics, they fall down on the job because they are not at all prepared to discuss LDS apologetics. Their arguments completely fall flat time and time again. And also the ad hominem attacks are absolutely relentless. I call it bulldog Mormonism. I released a full episode on the Mormon News Roundup. Let's see if I can find it here for you real quick here. Sorry to take this digression, but if you, let me see here. It's an episode that I released called Conquering My Shadows. Let's see sorry, yeah, here it is. Responding to Cardinals, a deep dive here. See, this is the episode that I released here. Responding to Cardinals of Word Radio, a deep dive, including never before seen interview. If you haven't watched this, I absolutely put Cardinal Ellis into his place. In my opinion, this is the absolute definitive smackdown on Cardinal Ellis on the web. I am really proud of this particular episode, which is over an hour long. I call it Conquering My Shadow. So yes, I was able to put Cardin into his place quite easily in this particular episode. Now, Garrick has said the following here: Word Radio just builds themselves like reality, builds themselves. Yes, it's exactly like reality TV. That's the secret. I mean, they've cracked the code here. They just appeal. They're just entertainment. Exactly. That's what the web is for entertainment quality, and they are entertaining. I don't care what you say about their apologetics and their pathetic appeals to truth, which they usually fall down on the job on. They're the one of the most entertaining live streams. I stand by that. No one else is even close. You think Mormonism Live is as entertaining as Word Radio? It's not. Do you think Mormon Stories is? Heavens no. You think the Mormon News Roundup is? No way. I've got a long way to go. They're just, you see, they evade the truth. See, they are not prepared to discuss scholarly elements because they're not scholars. And every time they try to wade into it, they really fall down on the job. That's where they really fall down. Why do so many people, especially young LDS men, find themselves drawn to this niche form of anti-woke bulldog Mormonism? See, and that is the question there. Why do so many, particularly young men, see, they're grabbing that demographic of the 18-year-old, 24-year-old white young Mormon men who, let's face it, a lot of those people have been leaving the church over the last couple of decades. They grab them, they hold them, they radicalize them into a woke, really anti-feminist bulldog-style Mormonism that is right-leaning, conservative, Trump-supporting, and then they capture those people in there. And it's from the ad hominem attacks. It's from the bullying that you see. And the episode where I stuck it to Cardinal Ellis, that's really where I called out some of his really reprehensible tactics in what he does. He compared me personally to a neo-Nazi. I mean, that's disgraceful. He compared me to Hamas terrorists. He compared ex-Mormons to Hitler. He said that ex-Mormons are like bees who need to be exterminated, and then he made this sound where they just need to be squished. And he also said that I was he said that ex-Mormons were like Hitler. You got to go back and watch that episode. That's really some of my finest work. And he also said one other thing. He said, me personally, D-Days, was just like anti-Semites who believe that Jews are behind an international banking conspiracy. He said all this stuff personally about me. I'm like, what the hell? By the way, I did have Cardinals on the Mormon News Roundup once upon a time as a co-host way back in episode, I think it's like episode 50, where I was perfectly congenial to him. But when it comes to him, to me, he's going to be as nasty as he possibly can. That's why I released that response video where I absolutely handled him and put him in his place, which is where he belongs. But the big question that I had when I asked and put together the short is, why does this particular brand of Mormonism have so much appeal? What is it about Word Radio that brings people in? And I can tell you from interacting with so many people in the comments section of the Mormon News Roundup that when somebody gets nasty right away in my comment section, a lot of times if they have their subscriptions as public, I will click on their subscriptions and I will see that they are a subscriber to Word Radio. Word Radio radicalizes people. It strips empathy from people because they're constantly on the attack. They're constantly nasty with personal insults constantly to people. Now, you will notice that I've been talking about Word Radio now for 5 minutes, and have I made one insult to them? Absolutely not. I try in my criticism of the church and of apologists, who I will lump Word Radio into kind of bubble gum apologists. I try to talk about concepts and not people. I have failed on occasion in this show in doing so, but that is my standard, and that is what I try to do. Let's see, some guy, when I was first trying to figure it all out, I ran into Word Radio, and before I knew it, whether they were pro-church, I definitely thought, oh man, I can't stand these guys. See, it's definitely a niche. Anyone who has charity and compassion and empathy for others is not going to like Word Radio style. So it's going to suck in those right-wing people, especially people who are anti-gay, anti-feminist, woke, right-wing, Christian, national, white Mormons are going to go on there. There's no doubt about that. And Garrick, the Mormon male bravado, flexing, and mudslinging. Exactly. That's a perfect summary of Word Radio. The mudslinging, the personal attacks, the nastiness, all under a thin veneer of entertainment. It's brilliant marketing. That's why they're really outsized in their influence. They should be such a small channel, but it's Cardin Ellis's genius that makes it all happen. You can clip that and put it on TikTok because I stand by that. I'm not afraid to give people props when they are clearly the head of the pack. And without question, Cardin Ellis has the best live stream in Mormonism, and it's not even close. Okay. Okay, I lied. I said I wasn't going to show. I'm going to show one more here. I'm just going to try to keep this to an hour here. Oh, you're going to see my search history. That's going to be funny. See what kind of shows I'm watching, huh? What am I doing here? Oh, I need to go to my own channel. Sorry. This was so good. I didn't have any slip ups here at all, and now look what I've done. Let's get back here. Where were we at? Word Radio. Okay. We'll just watch one or two more here. I appreciate it. Matt Harris's book, Second Class Saints, is a must read. In this fascinating book, historian Dr. Harris examines how race and civil rights shaped the history and policies of the LDS Church, particularly focusing on the years leading up to the 1978 revelation allowing Black men to hold the priesthood. Harris provides detailed research on the racial restrictions in place and the internal pressures from church leaders and members to end these practices, set against a broader societal shift towards civil rights. He delves into how institutional racism was justified and perpetuated through official church doctrine and policy, revealing the tension between cultural biases and evolving moral standards. Harris's brilliant work sheds light on the complex and often painful legacy of race within Mormonism, illuminating how institutional change was spurred by both external influence and internal conflict. If you haven't read Matthew Harris's groundbreaking book yet, what's stopping you from placing your order on Amazon today? That's a really good short, by the way. My shorts, quite frankly, I think that they're great, at least in my own mind. Now, they haven't gained the viral aspect of people like Alyssa Grenfell, but that's such a top quality short. I'm just going to toot my own horn because I'm not afraid to toot anybody's horn. Quality short. You get everything that you need about Matt Harris, the history of the race and the priesthood ban, and I even give an appeal to action. Top quality. Now, I watched Matt Harris's 17-part series on Mormon stories where he discussed the racial restrictions for persons of African descent in Mormonism prior to 1978, and also some of the ramifications of that racism that still persist all the way up until today. Absolutely fascinating. I can watch Matt Harris discuss any topic for hours on end, whether it's American government, whether it's law, or whether it's his incredibly well-researched book that it said that it took him 15 years to write. This is one of the most important works in Mormonism that has been released in the last year. And even when I did my top 10 Mormon News Roundup stories of the year, which I released back in January for 2024, I put this book into the top 10 Mormon News Roundup stories of the year, because that's how important of a book this is. If you haven't watched that series, if you haven't read the book, you are really missing out. You don't understand church leadership until you grappled with it in the way that Matt Harris has. A stupendous piece of scholarly rigor and leadership. I actually exchanged a couple of emails with Dr. Harris, both before the book came out, because of some connections that I had with some Black priesthood scandals that I can't get into. I'm afraid that that's confidential stuff. But I actually exchanged a couple of emails with him before, and he was really nice. And I also exchanged a few emails with him regarding the book, and he was incredibly gracious. Folks, it doesn't look like anybody wants to come on and hand me my lunch. I guess people out there are cowering in fear. I was hoping that someone would try to stick it to me, but no one has the courage to do so. But that's okay. I'm going to wrap up this Real Talk Mormonism 19 live calls and conversations on StreamYard here. Just want to reach out a couple of these last comments here from T. Grogan. Was it really a revelation? Read the document. Yes, a very interesting point here. Somehow in my old TBM head, I rationalized that God didn't want the blacks to have the priesthood because it would cause issues with white members at church. Back when there was segregating, disgusting. We've all been there. In fact, I have a Mormon News Roundup episode here where I get into some of the, let's see here. Sorry, I've got to, oh, come on. I got to pull this up for you. Sorry, this is a little bit on the fly here. I probably could have done a better job with this here. BYU professor. BYU fired. Racist. Anyway. Oh, man. It's Randy Bott. Why is this not pulling up? I don't know why it's not pulling up. I apologize for that. I have an episode that's coming out that's going to talk more about the race and the priesthood ban. If you want to stay tuned, I appreciate that. And folks, that's going to do it for us. Kind of the rambling session here, but I'm going to wrap it up here. We're going to release new episodes every single night on this channel. In fact, it has been over a year since I missed a day posting new content on this channel. I release a new episode at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every single day. I also release shorts at noon and at midnight. No one comes close to bringing the total amount of content in the Mormon sphere that I do. No one even comes close. Thanks so much for dropping by. Remember that no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.